Most people believe their biggest problem is lack of motivation, but if you watch your own behavior carefully, you'll notice something uncomfortable. You already know what you should be doing. You know when you should wake up, you know when you should stop scrolling, you know when you should start the work that actually matters. The problem is not knowledge. The problem is that somewhere between the moment you decide and the moment you act, your mind starts negotiating with you. Not loudly. Quietly. You sit down to work. The plan is clear. Maybe it's a project you've been delaying for weeks. Maybe it's improving your health. Maybe it's simply finishing something you promised yourself you would finish. And then the mind begins its subtle argument. Start in 10 minutes. You're not in the right mood today. You deserve a break first. You'll do it tomorrow with more energy. Nothing about these thoughts sounds dangerous. They sound reasonable, almost logical. But every time you accept that negotiation, something small happens inside your identity. You begin teaching yourself that your mind is in charge, and you are just reacting to it. That is where most people slowly lose control of their life. Not through dramatic failure, but through thousands of small moments where the mind quietly takes command. In this video, you're going to see something clearly. Why the mind constantly tries to negotiate you out of discipline, why intelligent people often struggle the most with this, and most importantly, how to shift from being controlled by your thoughts to becoming the person who decides which thoughts matter. Because the truth is simple. If you do not learn to control your mind will control the direction of your days, your habits, and eventually your life. And once that pattern becomes normal, most people spend years wondering why nothing ever truly changes. If you want to understand why your mind keeps pulling you away from discipline, you have to see the structure behind it. Most people treat their thoughts as random. They assume the mind simply reacts to mood, stress, or circumstances. But in reality, the mind follows predictable psychological patterns. Once you recognize them, something important happens. You stop taking every thought seriously. There are 3 internal mechanisms that quietly determine whether your mind controls you or whether you control it. The first is emotional negotiation. This is the moment when the mind tries to turn a clear decision into a debate. You decide you will work for 2 hours. The plan is simple. But once the moment arrives, your mind introduces feelings into the equation. You're tired. You don't feel focused. Maybe later would be better. The decision was already made, but the mind invites emotion into the room and suddenly the decision feels optional. What should have been action becomes negotiation. The second mechanism is something psychologists often call self-licensing bias. This happens when the mind uses a small positive action as an excuse to abandon a larger commitment. You wake up early one day, and the mind quietly says, "You did well today. You deserve to relax tomorrow." Or you complete one difficult task and immediately feel justified delaying the next one. The mind rewards small progress by removing pressure, and slowly the standard begins to slide. The third mechanism is the emotional fatigue loop. Your mind constantly tries to conserve energy. Discipline requires effort, and effort triggers resistance. So the mind looks for ways to escape discomfort by suggesting easier alternatives. Check your phone. Delay the decision, start something smaller. None of these suggestions feel destructive in isolation. But repeated over weeks and months, they create a pattern where the mind trains you to follow comfort rather than direction. This is why intelligent, capable people often struggle with consistency. Their mind is extremely good at producing convincing arguments for delay. But once you see these patterns clearly, something changes. You realize the real battle is not between you and the work. It is between your standards and the voice that tries to soften them. As Rohn once said, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. And that bridge is crossed not once, but every day, in the quiet moments when the mind asks you to lower the standard. The moment you begin to understand how the mind works, you stop viewing discipline as a personality trait. You begin to see it as a process of authority. Either you hold authority over your decisions, or your thoughts slowly take that authority away. Most people never consciously decide to surrender control. It happens gradually, through small internal patterns that repeat until they become normal. Let's look closely at where this loss of control actually begins. The first place the mind takes control is through negotiation disguised as logic. You wake up with a clear intention. Maybe you plan to exercise before work, or maybe you promised yourself you would start an important project early. The alarm rings, and immediately the mind begins speaking in a calm, reasonable tone. You slept late yesterday. You should recover today. You'll perform better if you start later. Notice what's happening here. The mind isn't shouting. It isn't dramatic. It simply reframes the situation in a way that reduces immediate discomfort. So instead of following the original plan, you adjust it. 10 minutes becomes 30 minutes. 30 minutes becomes tomorrow. Nothing catastrophic happened, but something subtle did. The mind learned that it can alter your decisions. Over time, this pattern becomes automatic. The moment effort appears, the mind begins negotiating. A simple example happens in the workplace. Someone decides they will finish a difficult report before the end of the day. The task requires focus, and it isn't exciting. After 20 minutes, the mind suggests checking email. Just for a minute. Then maybe a message arrives. Another notification appears. Suddenly an hour has passed, and the difficult task remains unfinished. The person still believes they are disciplined, but their behavior reveals something else. The mind has learned how to redirect attention whenever discomfort appears. Rohn once explained this clearly: success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. What he meant is simple. Discipline doesn't collapse in dramatic moments. It erodes in quiet negotiations. The second place control slips away is through what psychologists describe as self-licensing. This pattern is extremely common among people who are trying to improve their life. Imagine someone who begins building a new habit. Maybe they start waking up earlier. The first few days feel productive, and there is a small sense of pride. Then the mind introduces a new idea. You've done well this week. You can relax today. At first this sounds harmless. After all, rest is important. But the mind rarely stops there. One relaxed morning turns into two. Then the schedule becomes inconsistent. Eventually the original standard disappears completely. The strange part is that the person still believes they are disciplined. After all, they proved they could do it. But discipline isn't measured by what you can do occasionally. It's measured by what you continue doing when novelty disappears. This pattern shows up in finances as well. Someone decides to improve their spending habits. For a few weeks they carefully manage their money. They avoid unnecessary purchases and begin saving. Then the mind produces a justification. You've been responsible lately. You deserve something. One purchase becomes another. Soon the previous behavior returns. Again, nothing dramatic occurred. No crisis, no sudden collapse. Just a gradual loosening of standards. The mind didn't destroy discipline overnight. It simply introduced small permissions until the structure weakened. The third place control disappears is through emotional fatigue. Your mind constantly tries to conserve energy. From a biological perspective, this makes sense. Effort requires resources, and the brain prefers efficiency. But this instinct creates a problem when you are trying to build a disciplined life. The moment something becomes difficult, the mind begins searching for an easier path. Consider a simple example involving health. Someone decides they will exercise after work. The decision is logical. They know the long-term benefits. But when the workday ends, fatigue appears. The mind immediately proposes alternatives. You've had a long day. You should recover tonight. You can start tomorrow when you have more energy. Again, nothing about these thoughts feels unreasonable. But if the person follows this pattern repeatedly, the mind becomes trained to expect avoidance whenever effort appears. Eventually, the moment discomfort arises, the brain automatically suggests escape. This is why so many people remain stuck in cycles of inconsistency. They are not lazy. They are simply responding to a mind that has learned to prioritize comfort above direction. There is a quiet story that illustrates this clearly. A small business owner once decided he would dedicate 1 hour every evening to long-term planning for his company. The work wasn't urgent, but he knew it was important for growth. The first week went well. The second week became harder. After a long day of meetings and decisions, sitting down for another hour felt exhausting. Some evenings he skipped it. Other nights he delayed it. But after a few weeks he noticed something interesting. The days when he forced himself to sit down and think clearly were the days when his business improved. Problems became easier to solve. Decisions became sharper. He realized something simple. The hour itself wasn't the real benefit. The benefit was proving to himself that his mind did not control the direction of his effort. Once that shift happens, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It becomes authority. You begin to recognize the voice of negotiation the moment it appears. You hear the arguments your mind produces, but you no longer treat them as instructions. They become background noise. You still feel resistance. You still experience fatigue. But those sensations no longer determine the decision. And this is where real control begins. Not when the mind becomes quiet, but when you understand that the mind will always produce options, and you are the one who decides which options matter. Once you understand how the mind slowly negotiates control away from you, discipline stops looking like a personality trait. It stops being something you either have or don't have. It becomes something much more practical. A structure. Most people approach discipline as if it depends on effort. They believe they must constantly fight their mind, push harder, stay motivated, and maintain emotional intensity. But that approach almost always fails. Because effort fluctuates. Energy changes. Mood changes. Circumstances change. If discipline depends on those things, then it will always collapse the moment life becomes uncomfortable. Real discipline is quieter than that. It is not built through emotional force. It is built through identity. The moment you decide that your standards are not negotiable, something important begins to happen internally. You stop asking your mind for permission. You simply act. This does not mean resistance disappears. The mind will still produce arguments. It will still suggest easier options. It will still attempt to protect comfort. But the conversation changes. Instead of debating every decision, you follow a rule. The rule might be simple. When the time arrives, the action happens. Not because you feel ready, not because the conditions are perfect, but because the standard has already been chosen. Over time, this creates something powerful, compounding discipline. Each time you follow through despite resistance, you send a signal to yourself. You prove that your decisions are stronger than your moods. At first the changes feel small. You complete tasks you used to delay. You maintain routines that once felt difficult. You stop allowing temporary feelings to redirect your day. But after months, the effect becomes visible. Your work becomes more consistent. Your health improves through repeated habits. Your thinking becomes clearer because fewer decisions are controlled by impulse. This is the quiet compounding effect that most people overlook. They search for dramatic breakthroughs, powerful motivation, or life-changing moments. But discipline rarely appears in dramatic form. It appears through thousands of ordinary decisions where you choose responsibility over negotiation. And slowly, your identity shifts. You are no longer someone trying to become disciplined. You are someone who keeps the standard you set for yourself. That shift changes everything. Because once self-respect enters the equation, discipline is no longer about productivity. It becomes about integrity. The simple understanding that the promises you make to yourself deserve the same seriousness as the promises you make to others. At some point, every person who builds a disciplined life notices the same realization. The mind never truly stops speaking. It continues suggesting easier options. It continues offering shortcuts. It continues producing explanations for why something can wait until tomorrow. That part never disappears. What changes is something deeper. You stop believing every thought deserves authority. The mind becomes a source of suggestions, not commands. And once that shift takes place, your life begins to move in a different direction. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy. In fact, much of it still requires effort. You still wake up some mornings without energy. You still face tasks that feel inconvenient or uncomfortable. But those moments no longer decide your behavior. The standard decides. Over time, that quiet consistency begins shaping everything around you. Your work improves because it is no longer dependent on mood. Your habits become stable because they are no longer interrupted by negotiation. And slowly, your identity becomes clearer. You are not someone hoping to stay disciplined. You are someone whose decisions are no longer controlled by temporary thoughts. Because the moment you stop asking your mind for permission to follow through is the moment your life begins to move according to your direction instead of your impulses.